Hello friends, Namaste and welcome to my channel. I will be your guide as we traverse through the wondrous and magical worlds of our imagination. Through my words and the creations of your mind, we will travel through mystical lands of near and far, through high mountains and low valleys, through forests of the deep, flying over oceans and seas, wandering through mythical realms of gods and goddesses, strolling through the paths of the fairies and mystical creatures, following the trails of our heroes, and meandering through the extraordinary worlds of our imagination. However, before we delve into our story today, make yourself as comfortable as you can be. Let all your thoughts subside. Let all the worries of the world fade away. Think of how comfortable you are. Put down the weights you carry on your shoulders. Let your neck relax and your shoulders light. Feel the lightness move onto your arms, your chest, your legs, your feet. Feel how incredibly relaxed you are right now. Now you may choose to close your eyes and take a couple of deep breaths as you cleanse away any stress of the day. Take a deep breath now. 1, 2, 3. Now let my words caress you, and let my voice take you to the magical land of our imagination. Let's begin. Once upon a time, in ancient Japan, there lived a man called Sentaro. He had inherited a small fortune from his father and lived happily off of it, spending his time carelessly without any serious thoughts of work till he was about 32 years of age. One day, without any reason whatsoever, the thought of death and sickness came to him. The idea of falling ill or dying made him rather miserable. "I should like to live," he said, "till I am 500 or 600 years old at least, free from all sickness. The ordinary span of a man's life is very short." He then wondered whether it were possible, by living simply and frugally henceforth, should it be possible to prolong his life. He knew there were many stories of ancient history of emperors who had lived 1,000 years, and there was a princess of Yamato who, it was said, lived to the ripe old age of 500. Sentaro had often heard the tale of a Chinese king named Shiko. He was one of the most able and powerful rulers in Chinese history. He built large palaces and also the famous Great Wall of China. He had everything in the world he could wish for, but in spite of all his happiness and the luxury and the splendor of his court, the wisdom of his counselors and the glory of his reign, he was miserable because he knew that one day he must die and leave it all. Shiko, despite all his glory, power and riches, was plagued by the thought of his mortality day and night. He could not get away from it. If only he could find the elixir of life, he would be happy. The emperor at last called a meeting of his courtiers and asked them if they could find him the elixir of life, of which he had so often heard and read of. One courtier by the name of Jofuku said that far away across the seas there was a country called Horizon, and that certain hermits lived there who possessed the secrets of the elixir of life. Whoever drank of this wonderful draught lived forever. The emperor at once ordered Jofuku to set out for the land of Horizon to find the hermits and to bring back to him a phial of the magic elixir. He then supplied Jofuku with endless treasures of gems, gold and silver to be gifted to the hermits in exchange for the elixir. Jofuku sailed for the land of Horizon, but he never did return to the waiting emperor. But ever since that time, Mount Fuji has been said to be the fabled land of Horizon and the home of the hermits, who had the secrets to the elixir, and Jofuku, over the years, had been worshipped as the patron god. Now, Sentaro, ever so determined, hastily set out to find these hermits, so that he might obtain this mystical water of perpetual life. He remembered that as a child he had been told that not only did these hermits live on Mount Fuji, but they were said to inhabit only the very highest peaks. So he left his old home to the care of his relatives and started out in his quest. He travelled through all the mountainous regions of the land, climbing to the tops of the highest peaks, but never a hermit did he find. At last, after wandering for many days, he met a hunter. "Can you tell me," asked Sentaro, "where do the hermits live, who are believed to possess the elixir of life?" "No," said the hunter, "I can't tell you where to find such hermits, but there is a notorious bandit living up in these parts. It is said that he's a chief of a band of 200 followers." This odd answer irritated Sentaro very much, and he thought how foolish it was to waste more time in looking for the hermits in this way. So he decided to go at once to the shrine of Jofuku, who is worshipped as the patron god of the hermits in the south of Japan. Sentaro reached the shrine and prayed for 7 days, entreating Jofuku to show him the way to a hermit, so as he may get his hands on the water of perpetual life. At midnight on the 7th day, as Sentaro knelt in the temple, the door of the innermost shrine flew open, and Jofuku appeared in a luminous cloud, calling to Sentaro to come nearer, and he spoke thus: "Your desire is a very selfish one, and cannot be easily granted. You think that you would like to become a hermit, so as to find the elixir of life. Do you know how hard a hermit's life is? A hermit is only allowed to eat fruits and berries, and the bark of pine trees. A hermit must cut himself off from the worldly pleasures, so that his heart may be as pure as gold, and free from every earthly desires. Gradually, after following these principles, the hermit ceases to feel hunger, or cold, or heat, and his body becomes so light that he can ride on a crane or a carp, and can walk on water without getting his feet wet. You, Sentaro, are fond of good living and every comfort. You are not even like an ordinary man, for you are exceptionally idle. You would never be able to go barefoot or to wear only one thin dress in the middle of winter. Do you think that you would ever have the patience or the endurance to live a hermit's life? However, as you have dedicated your prayers and invoked my help, I cannot deny you. I will send you to the land of perpetual life, where death never comes, where the people live forever." Saying this, Jofuku put into Sentaro's hand a little crane made out of paper, telling him to sit on its back and it would carry him there. Sentaro obeyed wonderingly. The crane grew large enough for him to ride on it with comfort. It then spread its wings, rose high in the air, and flew away over the high mountains right out to the sea. Sentaro was at first quite frightened, but he grew accustomed to the swift flight through the air. On and on they went for thousands and thousands of miles. After several days they reached an island. The crane flew some distance inland and then alighted. As soon as Sentaro got down from the bird's back, the crane folded up of its own accord and flew back into Sentaro's pocket. Now, Sentaro began to look about him wonderingly, curious to see what the land of perpetual life was like. He walked around and eventually stumbled across the town. Everything was, of course, quite strange and different from his own land. But both the land and the people seemed prosperous. So he decided that it would be good for him to stay there and took up lodging at one of the inns. The proprietor was a kind man, and when Sentaro told him that he was a stranger and had come to live there, the innkeeper promised to arrange everything that was necessary with the governor of the city concerning Sentaro's stay there. He even found a house for his guest. And in this way, Sentaro obtained his great wish and became a resident in the land of perpetual life. Within the memory of all the islanders, no man had ever died there, and sickness was a thing unknown. Priests and holy men had come over from India and China and told them of a beautiful place called Paradise, where happiness and bliss and contentment fill all men's hearts. But its gates could only be reached by dying. This tradition was handed down for ages from generation to generation, but no one knew exactly what death was, except that it led to paradise. Quite unlike Sentaro and other ordinary people, instead of having a great fear of death, they all, both rich and poor, longed for it as something good and desirable. They were all tired of their long, long lives and longed to go to the happy land of contentment called paradise, of which the priests had told them centuries ago. Sentaro soon found out by talking to the islanders of their desire to die in order to reach this blissful land called paradise. Sentaro had wished to escape from dying. He had come to the land of perpetual life with great relief and joy, only to find that the local inhabitants themselves, doomed never to die, would consider it bliss to find death. What he had hitherto considered poison, these people ate as good food, and all things which he had been accustomed as food, they rejected. Whenever any merchants from other countries arrived, the rich people rushed to them eagerly to buy poisons. These they swallowed eagerly, hoping for death to come so that they might go to paradise. But what were deadly poison in the other lands were without effect in the strange place, and people who swallowed them with the hope of dying only found that they just could not die, even if they wanted to. Vainly they tried to imagine what death could be like. The wealthy would have given all their money and all their riches if they could just die. This perpetual life without any change, stuck in this world to live forever, seemed to these people a saddening curse. No matter what extent the islanders went to, they just could not fall ill, let alone die. To Sentaro, however, this was delightful. He said to himself that he would never grow tired of living, and that he considered it lunacy to wish for death. He was the only happy man on the island. For his part, he wished to live thousands of years and to enjoy life. He rejoiced in his perpetual life and set up a prosperous business, and vowed never to return to his native land, where death was inevitable. Now, days turned to weeks, weeks turned to months, and months turned to years. Life was long and ever unchanging. Years went by. However, they say be careful what you wish for. For now, things did not go as smoothly as at first. Sentaro, owing to his lazy nature, had heavy losses in his business. He was not the most popular man in the island, and had some quarrelsome affairs with the neighbors. This caused him great annoyance. Time passed like the flight of an arrow for him, for he was busy from morning till night. 300 years went by in this monotonous way. And then, at last, he began to grow tired of life, and he longed to see his own land and his old home. However long he lived here, life would always be the same, so was it not foolish and wearisome to live like this forever? Sentaro now wished to escape from the land of perpetual life. He recollected Jofuku, who had helped him before when he wished to escape death, and so he prayed again to the saint to bring him back to his own land again. No sooner did he pray than the paper crane popped out of his pocket. Sentaro was amazed to see that it had remained undamaged after all these years. Once more, the bird grew and grew and grew till it was large enough for him to mount it. As he did so, the bird spread its wings and flew swiftly out across the sea in the direction of Japan. Such was the willfulness of the man's nature that he looked back and regretted all he had left behind. He tried to stop the bird in vain. The crane held on its way for thousands and thousands of miles across the ocean. Then a storm came on, and the wonderful paper crane got damp, crumpled up, and fell into the sea. Sentaro fell with it. Very much frightened at the thought of being drowned, he cried out loudly to Jofuku to save him. He looked around, but there was no ship in sight. He swallowed a great quantity of seawater, which only increased his miserable plight. While he was thus struggling to keep himself afloat, he saw a monstrous shark swimming towards him. As it came nearer, it opened its huge mouth ready to devour him. Sentaro was all but paralyzed with fear, now that he felt his end so near, and screamed out as loud as ever he could to Jofuku to come and rescue him. Lo and behold, Sentaro was awakened by his own screams, to find that during his long prayer he had fallen asleep before the shrine, and all this extraordinary and frightful adventures he has had only but a wild dream. He was in a cold perspiration with fright and utter bewilderment. Suddenly a bright light came towards him, and in the light stood a messenger. The messenger held a book in his hand and spoke to Sentaro. "I am sent to you by Jofuku, who in answer to your prayer has shown you a dream what the land of perpetual life would be like. But you grew weary of living there, and shamelessly begged to be allowed to return to your native land, so that you might die. Jofuku again granted your wish, and allowed you to drop into the sea, and then sent a shark to swallow you up. But when death stared you in the face, you cried out loudly and shouted for help again. It is in vain for you to wish to become a hermit, or to find the elixir of life. These things are not for the likes of you. Your life is not austere and lacks fulfillment. It is best for you to go back to your paternal home and to live a good and industrious life. For only in a meaningful life will you find happiness. But give up the vain desire to escape death, for no man can do that. And by now you have surely found out that even when selfish desires are granted, they do not bring happiness." The angel disappeared as soon as he had finished speaking, and Sentaro took the lesson to heart. He returned to his old home, and giving up all his old vain wishes, he tried to live a good and useful life and to practice the lessons he learnt.